here.
I am here.
All right, we could stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 2-0. Moving on, the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as written.
And I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 2-0. All right, moving right into policy. So policy 2340, that was requested that we just add the updated information about Robert's Rules of Order, which edition we are following. Nothing massive. So I would make a motion to send this to the board for approval.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 2-0. Right on to the next one, 3226-4205. I know that this has been in here for a couple months because there were some concerns. Ms. Bradford, was that you that had concerns or questions?
Yeah, and I think they're resolved. Julie, did we resolve them? No, Dawn, sorry. I think we did we not? I don't see anything in red that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I think this was brought back just because, just concerns in general. I don't think there was anything specific that was pointed out. We did resolve everything that we had. I think it was left on the agenda, and I think it was even just sent back at the last meeting just because of talking about it. I don't think there was any one thing in particular.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been looking at, research on screen time, and I know in my professional career, I'm getting too much screen time, and I'm concerned with the amount of time our kids are spending looking at screens. So that's probably part of what I held it back for. We just got to find another way to get kids off the screens.
Well, I will say, I was just at Eaton Elementary School this morning, and I was there for over an hour, and there wasn't very many kids on screens for even a long period of time at all. I mean, I think I walked into one class, a few kids were finishing up an assessment, but there was mostly paper and pencil. I don't think kids are, even though we're one-to-one, I think people are assuming that kids are on the screens, the whole day. They're definitely not at the elementary level. I can't speak to the other grades because I haven't been to the high school, the middle school level, even where I've been to those classes, kids aren't all on them all day long.
And my middle schooler has indicated that he's not on his all day long either. So I think that's definitely a good thing because I agree, screen time does do damage. But well, if there are no other concerns, I move that we send this to the board for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 2-0. Next one. I know that this is one that we've had for a couple months in here. 1510, 4200, 7270. And I believe the next one is as well. I do know that there are some concerns from senior staff that we get this in place as we've kind of passed the deadline for it to be in place. Are there any concerns that you have?
Did anything change? I see no red.
Nope.
So it's always the first indicator that there's something new. And I see that this was approved May of 2022. So
I believe it was NCSBA updates that were made. And since I'm not sure.
I'm not sure exactly why it's maintaining other than just the
the concern around school safety in general. But the section E on page 35, threat assessment teams, this is a new general statute, and it requires boards of education to have policy in place by the beginning of the 24-25 school year.
So we're behind.
we're behind on that, so that's my urgency in getting this passed.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we pass this as it is written, and it is policy.
I will second that. 1510,
1510,
4200.
4200, and 7270.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 2-0. The next one is 4329, 7311, bullying and harassing behavior prohibited. And that had connection to the previous policy, correct? Any?
The only thing I think maybe might have been updated was the general statute references. So I don't have any other updates regarding this policy.
And Ms. Bradford, did you have any concerns with it?
No, but I would like to comment on page 41 under this policy, mandating reporting by school employees. I feel like this is very, very tight, very strict, and I think it's important that we get that message out that we're just really at zero tolerance. We really are, and I think it's important for the public to know that we're not just here slacking off.
Right. So we already are compliant in that area. Our staff annually are trained on mandatory reporting, so they've already had that for this school year.
Yeah,
And they get that twice. They get it from student support policies, and they also get it from HR training.
Yeah, for the last several years, we've put a video in place that every staff has to watch, and it goes over really mandatory policies we have to have them hit, and this is one of them.
Well, this consequence to mandatory reporting for reporting false allegations, it's just all of it it has consequences, it has teeth, and
Right.
that's good. I don't know that the general public understands that, but it does. So I move that we pass this one
And I
as
will
it is written, which is 4329 and 7311.
And I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0.
You might want to pace yourself.
Why?
No.
Why? Why pace myself?
Hey, we heard breakfast
silly?
was on you.
Yes, we heard you were buying. Policy 2230. We held this in committee for a couple reasons. After having some discussion with Ms. Walker about the turnaround task force, we want to make sure that that was added. The sustainability committee section was added last month, but that should be the only major change. And so I would move that we send this to the board for approval. Yes, ma'am.
I would like some discussion.
Can you
So
second it so
I
we
will
can?
second,
Okay.
and then let's discuss.
All righty.
On page 50, 10, turnaround task force. The task force is responsible for addressing disparity in terms of academic performance that exists in our schools. The goals are to identify contributing factors, organize a comprehensive response with discrete goals, identify tactics to achieve these goals, estimate the cost of those tactics. And then, let me just keep going. Potential funding. The task force is intended to be short-term with the objective of lifting identified schools with regards to staffing, resources, community involvement. So what's short-term? I need a definition of short-term, please.
And this is just me after having many conversations with Ms. Walker, just making sure that our high needs or low-performing schools are reaching a level that is, what's the word I'm looking for? So that they are achieving in a much, can you help me?
Well, I think, and this comes back to, I think, the conversation that we have a lot as principals of the difference between growth and accountability, right? It's a question about whether or not these schools are catching up to the norm faster than just kind of proficiency. I think we get into this trap sometimes where we think, okay, if they're proficient or not proficient, that means whether they're good or bad schools.
Right.
And if schools are continually growing at a high rate, they will reach their accountability over time. So I think you're right. I think short-term is a subjective term. Like, when do we say it's completed?
Yeah.
I think, but having a task force or having a group or committee or whatever, I think we need to define the language of it. What is it? Is it a board committee? Is it an advisory committee? But there's nothing wrong with having a group whose eyes are turned towards those schools all the time. But I think you're right about when do we say, okay, we're done, right?
Well, it was created without board approval. And it's been conducted without a whole lot of board involvement. And so when it tells me that it's supposed to be short-term, I believe it's at least a year old,
Correct.
maybe longer. And so, short-term to me is generally is not years. And I think it's doing a good job, don't get me wrong. I just want the language to say what the, we're not going to be able to hit a measurable goal, or just make it take short-term out and just, let it be a committee. But if you're going to say short-term, you need to identify what the short-term is. And this would just come up at the board level probably when we go to vote on it. So bringing it up
I think
now.
that might be a good place to bring it up is with the whole board.
Yes.
But I do want
So
to
that Ms.
also
Walker
talk
can-
about the fact that you now have 10 committees. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
experienced enough to know if that's a lot or a little.
It's a lot.
Okay, because I thought
I
it was a
think.
lot too.
And
But,
that's just advisory committees.
right, true, not even the work that sometimes we're doing with all other groups as well. So I think I think it's good for a board discussion. And it might even honestly wait until you have the new board sat and look at all of the committees together, you know what I mean? Because you have new people coming in who might have skills or abilities in some of these areas too, because you might be changing committee
We have committees that
rosters, right?
haven't met all year.
Yeah.
Correct. My only concern with not sending it forward is that unless we invite Ms. Walker, who is almost done with us, and she is one of the individuals that did start this up, I believe her, in collaboration with the previous superintendent, began this committee. And it wasn't initially a committee, to my understanding. It has
It was
recently.
a task force, I think.
Right, it has recently become a committee, just so that they could continue to work without Ms. Walker being there. But I would rather have her present, because I know that she was there
Yeah.
at the start with the intentions that she had.
What about this? What about if we move it on, and then even, next week and the week after, and then we bring it back in, okay, so the new board's sworn in December, so maybe we bring it back in January or February to look at it again with the other committees. We just go ahead and put it on the calendar.
I'm fine with that. So I would move that we send this on to the board as is.
Ms.
as
Mason?
is written. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's loud. Sustainability Committee had a question.
Yes, sir.
Under the members, it lists a sustainability manager. That's not a position we have.
For the county, we do.
That's
That would be who that would,
that's the county,
sustainability manager.
okay.
Where is that, Eddie?
Under 9, it's like the last line of the second paragraph.
So do we need to say a county? Let's add, I move that we, I move to amend your motion to approve, to add the word county, so it's clear to anybody that reads it in the future. Or
I'll
you just
second
put
that.
NHC.
Which would you prefer, ma'am?
Don't care. What do you think, Eddie? NHC or county?
I
Which should
would-
make it clear to the
I would
uninitiated.
put county.
And to save yourself the question, Eddie, you're the subject matter expert. Thank you.
I think that was clear.
But you caught it, and that's a good thing.
All right, so that was amended, and I will second that amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0. And then moving this
Hold on.
amended policy onto the board, I make a motion to move this amended policy onto the board.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Oh, don't we need to deal with the
That'll be
The
next.
form.
That's next.
the form?
I don't think it's listed on here, but it is attached to that.
Yeah, actually, we should probably,
Well, let's pass the policy, and then we'll go to the interest form. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 2-0. And looking at the Universal Committee interest form, you'll see that the Turnaround Task Force Committee is added on there. I don't see any other changes. Are there any other changes we feel we need to add?
I think we need to get
The
the sticker into
process.
play.
What is the process? Because I know that was a concern, and that is a concern for several of the committees that are out there. It's been in discussion, I know, with the ACES committee. And so just what's the process?
Well, I think it's a question of shoring up and making sure the process is effective. I've never seen this form come in before, so I
Because we
think,
keep having
Because
to
we've
read.
been putting it
Well,
off for
true.
almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
honestly, I would think you need to digitize this form and have a link in the board section of the website, say if you would like to participate in the committee. And I don't even think you need a paper form. I think you can do a Google form that then translates to a website, and then when you guys are ready to work with these committees, I can give you any name that has been requested to be on one of these committees.
So the process would be a person who's interested, if it was posted online, and I'm just asking for clarification. If it was posted online, somebody could fill it out
Yes.
and click whatever
Committees
committees they're
interested in.
interested in. It would then go to whom? You? Or
yeah.
the super?
Yeah,
And then that would be directed to the leaders of those, like the representatives of those committees. Because I know some of them have bylaws. I know the Gifted Advisory Council has
Right.
bylaws, and I know that the ACES committee has bylaws. So it would go to them, and then they would have the control of. So the
I think
basic
so.
process is fill it out, super, disperse.
yep. And whether
Okay.
that disperses to you guys as the board or my subject matter experts, either one.
Okay?
But that, once we get this in running, I think it's going to be more convenient and easier for a parent to fill it out if they can just go to the website,
Online.
fill it out, and it's done.
Yes.
And then I keep a running record of it because it goes into an Excel that I can use.
Perfect. Yes, ma'am?
In spite of my anxiousness to get this done, I would say, we did form a safety committee, and I don't see it there. I'm hoping it's hiding and it's there.
The safety committee, if you recall, because I know that this was something that you were concerned about when we had discussed it, was not involving community members at that point.
Yeah. that's
So
why I
this
thought
is a
the answer.
community-
Just wanted to check.
This is a community interest.
involvement. Yep, okay, thank you.
So with that being said, I want to get this moving. So
Yes.
I would move that we send this to the board for approval.
Second?
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0. All right, on to, we have a whole lot of changes from NCSBA, but I only picked a few because time. So the first one is policy 1310, 4002, and there are multiple changes to that one. There is clarification in, let me move this over so there is clarification in some requirements. There's in subsection C2A. There's a new notification requirement in C3. There are updates in C4E and D9 based on statutory changes, minor changes, and updates to legal references. So those are the changes that occurred.
Discussion.
I would like to make a motion to send this on to the board. Do I hear a second? So that we can have discussion.
No,
We can always, so no discussion on it then?
I want discussion, yes.
So then we need a second.
A second.
All right, now discussion.
Okay, I have two concerns.
Okay.
And they're both probably involve the attorney. On page 58, 2A, I have no problem with qualifications of a child's teachers, including licensed stature, and 5, school entry requirements, including required immunizations. We heard this about 2 years ago, and I was good with that. But this new addition and the recommended immunization schedules, I'm totally against that. It's just, no. So I would ask the attorney, what's the difference between the required immunizations, what are those? And we have no idea what recommended is, and we have no idea who will recommend those in the future. So I'd rather take them on a case-by-case basis when they get recommended, rather than carte blanche, put it in a policy that whatever recommendation comes down the pike, that we have to enforce it without any discussion whatsoever. So I'm going to ask that we strike that. Are you prepared to talk about that?
I
or
am,
should we
a
hold?
little bit. With respect to that paragraph, I'm looking at 2A on page 58. Required immunizations, I interpret, and I think it's pretty easy to interpret, that those are required by North Carolina state law. You and I spoke about the list that pulled up pretty quickly when you talked into your phone. Recommended immunization schedule, that's a slippery slope. I think, in society today, you could argue ad nauseum about the need for a COVID shot and whether it's going to help or whether it's not going to help, and it's become political. When I look at that last 4 words of that, 5 words of that paragraph, that's a very broad swipe. I think to eliminate any fighting over what shots the children should have, what immunizations the children have, you probably ought to define it a little better. I'm not happy with that those last 5 words. Leave it open to, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't give clarity about what immunizations we need to follow.
So I'm going to move in a minute that we strike that and to amend this, but I have one more concern, and this is on page 63. Again, I've seen these before sitting in this committee, and this one is E under, I think it's 3, hold on. 4E, opportunities to withhold consent, to opt out. So opportunities to withhold consent, opt out. Number E, it's about tobacco, and it says, the child's participation in any protected information survey given as part of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System or National Youth Tobacco Survey. And we were fine with that last year, 2 years ago, but now it says the North Carolina Youth Tobacco Survey. So I would ask the attorney, because we don't know what that one says.
I actually do.
Do you?
I went and looked up they don't have an updated one, but the 2022 version, because I was curious to see what it covers, and it primarily discusses behaviors related to vaping, tobacco, cigarettes. There was another word in there too. But that there's no real other focus. It's primarily focused on the smoking behaviors. It's the ages listed on there are 9 years old and up, but it's primarily based on smoking behaviors. If children have tried these, if they have purchased, if they have tried to quit, things like that. So that's what it's. I went and looked it up before all of this to see, and the 2022 version, that's what it said. I don't know, Ms. Varnum, I know you've had a lot of interaction with some of these surveys. Is there anything that you have seen that's different than that?
No, nothing different than you're describing. My understanding is it's a very strong correlation to the national study, and really these are able to grab kind of a swath of data to let us know what trends look like within our community and outside of our community that helps establish the delineation of resources that may come from the state.
So my question for the attorney would be, is the North Carolina Youth Tobacco Study one of those that is the ones that are named by law that we have to do? Do you know?
At this point, I do not. I'm going to circle back around with you.
Okay, we have another opportunity to deal with, or do you know, Julie? I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to explain that it is a survey that is, that there's an urgency for school districts to comply if they're randomly chosen. And in this section, it just means that we're codifying that is a survey that does exist and that parents would have the opportunity to withhold consent or opt out.
Okay,
So
I'm
it's
gonna-
adding it is giving an additional protection to families for decision making.
I'm going to leave that one alone, and then I'm going to, Madam Chair, I'm going to move that we strike on page 58.
Can I speak to 58 a little bit?
Red language. Surely.
So I looked up the general statute about what immunizations are required. The language here looks like it's not saying additional immunizations, it just says the recommended immunization schedule, which is when the kid is supposed to get those immunizations, you know, 1 at 6 months, 1 at 18 months. I don't think it speaks to adding immunizations. I think it's saying follow the pattern and schedule recommended by the Department of Health and Human Services, if that makes sense.
And that would be the particular ages that those are
Right.
required.
Right. So I don't think that adds other immunizations. I think it adds a schedule to do that.
Okay.
And I'd ask the lawyer to double check that too, but I think that's what that reads.
Let me read the whole thing again.
Maybe change to in the required immunization schedule.
No, because it's not required, because people can opt out of immunizations. So they're not required. And there is another policy that does give avenue for families to be able to opt out of those immunizations,
Right,
correct?
and we have that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So it could be
Exemption.
in the recommended schedule of the required immunizations.
Yes.
That way you're
Yes.
clarifying that
If we
it's the
wanted to make
schedule
that
of those.
clarification.
Yes, I would be fine with that language.
So how would we rephrase that? Are you good with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can you rephrase that for us?
Recommended immunization
I mean, you-
schedule for the required immunizations.
Yes.
No, Julie, you had it more succinct.
Oh,
You can't make the motion, but we can.
right,
so.
right. Let me see if I can find that again. Let me go back. And
Rewind.
the recommended schedule of these immunizations.
Required immunizations, yeah.
Okay,
Recommended-
and the recommended schedule for these required immunizations.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing that Brian said.
I'm good. That'll work. Thank you. You good, Brian?
All right, so
All right, so I withdraw my motion to
strike?
amend. Strike it,
But we still
whatever.
want to amend.
Yes, no, I'm just, oh, yes,
the word.
I withdraw that one to amend it with this, as it's just been said. So maybe read it one more time?
All right, so I will make the motion to amend policy 1310, 4002, section C, to A, to say, for part number 5, school entry requirements, including required immunizations, and the recommended schedule for these required immunizations. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment? Because I did make an original motion for
Aye.
the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye, sorry. Opposed? That passes 2-0. For the full amended policy, I move that we move it forward to the board.
Second?
All those, or any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 2-0. The next one is another NCSBA, remote participation in board meetings. The
Can you give
changes.
the synopsis of this one?
Yep, the changes are, it's a clarification that remote participants no longer count toward quorum except in meetings held during a state-declared emergency. It clarifies that remote participants do not vote except in meetings held during a state-declared emergency, and there are updates to the legal references in here.
So, what does that mean in the real world for us? If we have a stated emergency and we're not here, but we're holding a meeting, and
If there is a state declared, my understanding, if there is a state declared emergency, for example, when we had, I believe it was last year, and we had to hold our meeting via Zoom, that was a state declared emergency, and so our votes and our quorum counted. If there is, say, a different situation where a board member cannot be present and they Zoom in, they will no longer, according to this, and this is based off of a court case, they will no longer be able to be counted as part of quorum, and they will no longer be able to be counted in any of the votes that occur, unless the board approves them. So that's what
And
this.
this does set out, I went through it, all the things that you can be absent for, and it's very
Correct.
lenient.
Yes.
So, okay,
I would move that we send this forward to the board for approval.
Yep, second.
All right, any further discussion?
We're probably going to have to explain it like twice
fine.
in the regular board meeting.
That's fine. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 2-0. Now, these are going to be hopefully super quick because all that was adjusted were legal references.
Yeah.
So for policy 4120 is just legal references.
Okay, I've gotten lost.
Starting on page
76.
76.
Thank you, yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
That's why I use stickies. It helps. Stickies
I just
are
want to see if I have any notes on the page or any questions.
How are the-
And I don't think I have. I think I'm
fantastic.
Much faster than get back in time.
I'm good.
Okay, so I move that we send this forward to the board for approval.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0. Same changes, different policy. Policy 6430, purchasing requirements for equipment, materials, and supplies. And this was just legal references as well that were changed.
I move that we move 6430 on to the board for approval.
All right, I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 2-0.
Going for a record here.
Oh, of course. 6450, purchase of services. Just legal references that were changed.
Madam Chair, I move that we pass it as written.
And I will second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0. And we went through this quickly.
Last but not least.
Last but not least, same thing, 7650, employee travel and other expense reimbursement.
Madam Chair, I
Just
move that
legal
we
changes.
move it on as written to the board.
I will second. Any further discussion?
I have a concern with this. I'm just kidding.
Sir? Sir?
Smart Ally.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 2-0. And something that I keep forgetting to do is to review all of the things that we just did, so I'm going to do that. So existing policies for amendment at the next regular meeting with no changes. I have 2340, 3226/4205, 1510/4200/7270, 4329/7311, the universal application, 2302, 4120, 6430, 6450, and 7650. Existing policies for amendment with changes, I have 2230 and 1310/4002.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we adjourn.
And I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 2-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
You're welcome.